Hi, welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abbasi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And today I want to talk about transforming our attitudes and our outlook. But before I do, I want to reiterate the book of the month and our listener challenge for those of you who may have missed yesterday. So the June book of the month is Drop the Rock, Removing Character Defects, Steps 6 and 7. And this is a popular book in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a practical guide to letting go of character defects that get in the way of true and joyful recovery. And the June listener challenge is the Healthy Habits Challenge. What are we doing this month is to adopt a new healthy habit for 30 days. So this could be, I'm going to give you some examples: drinking water more, incorporating a daily walk, reducing some digital screen time from your day. Mindful eating is an idea. Incorporate 10 minutes of stretching throughout your day. Reducing your sugar intake. This one is not for me, but maybe for some of you. Reading from a paper book 30 minutes a day, and coming up with a consistent sleep schedule or some sort of sleep hygiene improvement. And an additional, just an extra little one you can consider is incorporating one plant-based meal a day for 30 days. So this is our challenge for the month, and I have a few of them working. Surprise, surprise. So I need to commit to one and say, this is my healthy habits challenge for the month. I think so. Today is June 1st. Well, you guys usually listen the next day, I think. So, yeah, I don't want to commit right now. So I'll have to pick what mine's going to be. I'm thinking drinking more water. That's what I'm thinking, but we shall see. Okay, so today I want to talk about transforming our attitudes and outlook on life. And I want to talk about how our recovery program, we here, our recovery program, because I feel like that's what we're doing here. I mean, a lot of what I'm talking about is based on AA, but it's based on AA and I've incorporated into my stroke recovery. So probably customized a little bit for sobriety plus stroke recovery, vestibular recovery. And if you're not in recovery at all and you're just living, there's a lot of helpful information here. So I want to talk about how to shift our perspectives and practice doing that regularly in order to feed lasting recovery or having a lasting positive outlook. Of course, things are going to be up and down, but how can we practice this enough that it starts to become habit, that when we encounter something that's challenging, our habit is to do something that's healthy for us instead of leaning towards thinking about a drink or starting to feel depressed, that kind of thing. So the reason why this came up for me today is the daily reflection. So you can find the daily reflection online if you just Google daily reflection. It's on the AA website. And the daily reflection today talked about attitude and action. And I really got into this topic today because it aligns very much with all the stuff we've been focused on over the past couple weeks. our book of the month as well last month, Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. It also has a lot to do with attitude and how depending on this positive attitude, it could be the difference between life and death for people who are struggling with really difficult challenges. So, and that's an understatement. I'm not comparing that to the book because that is an understatement for the book. Okay. So this is what the daily reflection says. It said, one of the promises of sobriety in AA is that our whole attitude and outlook upon life will change. When I was drinking, my attitude was totally selfish and self-centered. My pleasure and my comfort came first. I lived in a constant state of self-seeking where everything revolved around my next drink, feeling good. That's what everything revolved around for me. And that is self-centered. That is selfish. I didn't realize it at the time. If you were to ask me back then when I was in active drinking, I would have been like, I'm the most thoughtful, least self-centered person that I know. Well, I wasn't. I was totally self-centered because I was constantly thinking about how I was going to get my next drink. And if I needed to sacrifice somebody else's pleasure in order to have my own, then that's what I was going to do. So in sobriety, this self-seeking is slipping away, and my attitude towards life and other people is changing. And I think it's constantly going to be changing. This shift, though, has been gradual and brought about by taking consistent action. And this is what the daily reflection talked about. It talked about both attitude and action. And believe me that my attitude towards other people has been for so long a freaking heavy boulder that I was pushing uphill to get over it. You know, like I just could not interact with people and have them not piss me off. And I would find myself like just so aggravated by other people and feeling like, well, I can't do anything about it, you know, but I would try to do it, right? That's the difference. I was trying to change people, even though people can't be changed. People can change, but I can't change them. And so this change in attitude that I have acquired through the program was not what came first, though. If we have a chicken and an egg, the attitude did not come first. The action is what came first. I needed the attitude of willingness, but I think that's a little different than what we're talking about here. So the action comes first and then the attitude follows. That was my experience. So the daily reflection goes on to say, by working the steps, attending meetings, and carrying the message, I've been able to restore my sanity. So I want to talk about sanity for a moment. I can honestly say, this is my opinion, that I have never felt sane prior to getting sober. I even remember being a little child and feeling like unreasonable thoughts. And it was several years into sobriety where I actually felt sane. And I'm defining sanity. When you look it up, it means soundness of mind. There is another place that says it's the ability to think and behave rationally. And I have had some invisible illnesses that have impeded that. Um, I needed medication for my anxiety and my depression. And without it, I was not able to think and behave rationally. I could tell you a million stories about how I was not acting and thinking rationally. And I really need to loosen up and tell you some of these stories. I have some fears about talking about some of the stuff that's embarrassing to me, but I feel like that's where you are going to be able to relate better. I don't want to always talk about these things on a surface level. I want to actually give you examples of stuff that I have done in my past that is really reflects insanity. And I certainly have done it for sure. So now this is the second time I'm telling you in a week that I need to start sharing some stories that I'm afraid to share. So that means I'm probably getting closer to doing it. But um yeah, so I've had these invisible illnesses and I like calling them that because that's really what it is. It's something that you can't see, but it can be debilitating, and it is an illness. It very much is an illness. There's something wrong with the chemicals in my body and I needed medication to fix it, to make things balanced. So I always thought of sanity before I got sober. I thought of insanity, insane, uh, as somebody who needed a straight jacket. And that is not the extreme of insane that I'm referring to when I talk about my sobriety program. I'm talking about just plain old soundness of mind. And I don't think we give that definition enough of an ability to let it apply to us. Like we're comparing out. We're not allowing that to really allowing ourselves to connect with that. I mean, how often do you have soundness of mind? I can't be the only one that struggles with soundness of mind. But this is why I ended up going to a psychiatrist a couple months ago, and I'm still going because I did not have soundness of mind. And I think that sanity word is scary, and it's something to shy away from. Kind of like I think back in the 60s, 70s, people didn't talk about going to therapists or psychiatrists or anything like that because you were thought to not to be crazy, and that's just as uh I can't think of the word, just as unattractive of a word as insane, crazy, insane. And I think there are different levels of this sanity and craziness and all that stuff. So the key for me for this shift in attitude was and still is action. It's through action that we can see the changes in our mindset. So, attending meetings regularly keeps me moving in the right direction, keeps me moving, period. In my sobriety program, it keeps me moving in my life, going to these meetings and interacting with people. That is the first action I do every day after I put my 2 feet on the ground. That's not true. I take my dogs out for poo-poos and potties and I feed them. But it's the next action that I take. Early on in sobriety, I had 2 requirements of myself. One was that I go to at least 3 meetings a week. And that might not seem like very much to you, but I'll expand on that. And the second requirement was to read or listen to at least 20 minutes of AA literature a day. And these 2 requirements were just enough to keep me from getting stagnant in the AA program in sobriety. It was something that I had that just kind of kept me moving, you know? But what actually happened was I would listen to virtual AA meetings at work most days for a couple hours each day. Actually, the IT department called my phone and asked me if I was streaming something on my computer. And I said yes. Like they didn't ask me. I'm sure they could see what website I was streaming and stuff. They didn't ask me any other questions. They just asked me if I was doing that. And I said yes. And they said, okay, we just wanted to make sure that it was intentional, I guess. I know that my boss was on board for whatever I had to do. So if anybody were to go to him, I'm sure he would have been like, yeah, just let her do whatever she's got to do. So I would do my work and I would listen to these AA meetings. I wouldn't share or anything. I was just kind of sitting in the corner. And this was back way before Zoom was a thing. This was way before COVID. So there were virtual meetings back then. And so I would just listen. It was like I couldn't get enough. Because during that time, that was also when I was going to IOP. So I would listen to my AA meetings and then I would leave in the middle of the day and go to IOP. Then I would come back in the afternoon and I would listen to some more meetings. Like I was constantly filling my mind with AA constantly. It never left my mind. And then another thing that I would do is I got the big book on Audible and I listened to that on the drive home, which was about an hour and a half drive home. I would listen to that. And I would go to meetings it was typically Monday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then I also started going to a Thursday meeting. So I ended up going to at least 5 meetings a week. So my goal was 3. And I started going to 5. So when I think back of everything that I was doing, I'm like, wow, I'm kind of proud of myself. I didn't realize how invested I was, how much action I was taking. Another thing that I would do to support my reading 20 minutes of literature a day. Now I said read or listen to 20 minutes a day. So I would listen to the big book on the way home from work. That was at least an hour. And then I also would, on Saturday mornings, there was a grapevine meeting. It was called the grapevine meeting. And we would read a story out of the grapevine. And so there was this big, gigantic trunk just filled with years and years and years of Grapevine magazines. And so I would pick one blindly. I would just take one out of the trunk. I asked permission, and I would take it home and read stories out of the magazine throughout the week, and then I would bring it back the following Saturday and pick another one and take it home. So, wow, I just had a few goals of action in my mind that nobody gave them to me. It was just like, this is the minimum you're allowed to do. That was what I told myself. And it gave me just enough momentum to just start rolling forward. And as I was rolling forward, I didn't know it at the time, but it was pulling my attitude behind it in its wake, all this action. I really was working the program. And I also had an incredible boss. You guys know I talk about him all the time. I'm going to continue to talk about him because he was pivotal in my life. He probably has no idea what it was actually that he did for me, but he did a lot for me. And I'm so grateful for him because I don't know if he's familiar with AA. I have no idea. But the things that we would talk about when we would have like my one-on-ones, and I had to talk about my attitude sometimes because not in a bad way, but I could be kind of a bitch and to other people. And so he would just help me to um, figure out how to put that frustration somewhere where it didn't affect my job. And he was most interested in me growing my relationships and my network at work. And he was interested in helping me to build relationships with executives, and the advice, the guidance, I should say guidance, not advice, the guidance he gave me was so in line with this whole thing about responding instead of reacting, pausing, that pause. He would pause to the point of aggravation. He would pause to the point where people were like, did he even get my email? So, but he helped me to know that pausing is okay, and we can pause and use it to our benefit. So, he was very helpful in encouraging me to apply my program at work and apply it in my relationships at work. And I know that he doesn't have any idea how much what we talked about aligned with my program. I don't think so, unless he's a wizard and had it all. It was part of his master plan. But he really was truly so vital to my growth into an adult. And I say that because we learn in sobriety that when we started drinking in our lives, that's when we stopped maturing. So I stopped maturing around 14, 15, and it took me, that's 25 years that my mental and emotional state had to catch up. And I got to do that at my last job. And I got to do that with my boss. He helped me grow up. Truly, he helped me grow up. And so I'm really grateful for that. But it took a lot of work, a lot of action, a lot of conversation. And it was really nice to have a buddy at work. I'm fortunate that I had that. I realized that there's not a lot of people that have that kind of gift at work when they get sober. So, working the steps provided, so that action provided a structured way to address and overcome my past behaviors and thought patterns outside of work. I would practice it outside of work, and then it was really weighing on my conversations with my boss at work. And so at home, the more junk that I was able to share from what I call my dark place, the more that I was able to share that at meetings, with my sponsor, with other sober women, the less I was holding on to, and I was able to feel lighter. And what I was doing, once again, unknowingly, was preparing myself for that first moment of knowing serenity that we're promised in the program, but I didn't know when it was going to hit. And about, I think it was like year 3 or something like that, maybe 2, that I knew serenity, just like what the program says. I stopped me in my tracks. So again, the action in the steps, clearing away resentments, acknowledging my role in my relationships, making amends, all of these actions paved the way for that attitude of mine to keep smoothly rolling up closer and closer behind me, playing catch up, enabling me to become an adult slowly, and be able to manage my behavior, carrying the message to other alcoholics, that not only other alcoholics, but now in recovery, carrying the message to anybody in a recovery network of mine. It helps me to reinforce my own commitment to my program. And at this point, where I'm actually shifting gears from being inward focused to now being able to share the message with other people, share my, how did I do it? This is where my attitude has now caught up with me, and I'm able to share my experience, strength, and hope with others. And that can only be done, you can only share your experience, strength, and hope with others with a positive and helpful attitude. And that came from all of that action over the years. With this attitude maintained through continuous action, working the steps in all of my affairs, even stroke recovery, even this vestibular disorder that I have, I can stay sober. I can keep growing my purpose in stroke recovery, and I can help others achieve this same freedom by telling them about the action that I take. Doing the next right thing has absolutely been my North Star. When I was sitting in the very, very beginning of sobriety, I remember sitting in my recliner on the Saturday morning, and I've told you guys this before, and think I'm all reclined, feet up, I'm drinking my coffee, and I'm like, I do not want to get up, change my clothes, get out of my jammy jammers, and go to this Saturday morning meeting, the Grapevine meeting at 10 a.m. But I didn't have to want to do it. I just had to do the next right thing. So I didn't even let myself sit there and ponder whether I wanted to or not, because It doesn't matter. Whether I want to or not, if I don't want to and I sit there for 5 minutes thinking about how much I don't want to do it, I still have to do it because it's the next right thing. So instead of pondering, I used to just get right up. As soon as I thought, what time is it? I wouldn't even let myself go and like exhale in like tiredness or frustration or dislike. I would just get up. Um, and when I focus on doing what's right in front of me, I I still do, and it gives me a life of purpose and fulfillment. It's funny how getting up and doing something that you don't want to do can give you fulfillment in the end. So I focus on the work today and the attitude tomorrow is waiting for me. It's it's like my attitude, it's like I go to bed doing the action. I get on my knees. I thank God for my sobriety and so on and so forth. And so I'm doing the work before I lay my head on my pillow. And then when I wake up in the morning, I lift my head up. My attitude, my positive attitude is waiting on my nightstand, when I wake up. So my attitude now is that I'm willing to go to any length to remain physically and mentally, emotionally sober. This willingness extends way beyond not picking up a drink. It is me showing up for life, ready, like ready to take it on, like crouched down, like I'm ready to catch a line drive at third base, kind of ready, you know? Um, this commitment has been especially important to me as I've walked through stroke recovery and as I'm starting to figure out how to walk through life with a disability. Sobriety has given me the tools to face these challenges. It has given me the tools to face any challenge. I'm sure of that now. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more ahead of me, but I'm doing pretty okay now. Um, Sobriety has taught me that while I may not have control over things that happen to me, I do have control over my attitude, how I respond to it, how I decide to wake up in the morning. And it started in the beginning in early sobriety with working that God box, with learning how to pause, learning how to take some kind of action that isn't going to cause some sort of need to make an amends later. Learning how to pause. And then as I keep practicing that pause, it's helping me to really be able to calculate my responses. And those were throughout over the past 8 years, those responses have been typically to people, places, and things. But lately, over the past year, those responses, those calculated responses, are to what's going on inside of me. And my sobriety has helped me to train my attitude. And that makes the difference for me in this recovery. Thank you for listening to the Recovery Daily podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please click like And you can subscribe if there is no like button, depending on the podcast platform that you're tuning in on. Be sure to follow Recovery Daily Podcast on social media. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I will talk to you tomorrow.